All right. Thank you so much for doing this, Andrew. I really appreciate you taking out the time for this, and I'm really excited to jump into this thing. For the viewers, I don't have a formal name for this podcast, video series, whatever we want to call it. I just chat with individuals who I find interesting in the sphere of B2B marketing, SEO, etc., and record the chat, put it on the internet so other folks can learn from it. So yeah, I'm really excited for this.
Likewise, thank you very much for inviting me on. Really happy to be here, and I know you've got some really interesting and tough questions lined up. So thank you very much. Big fan of your work you guys do as well, and I do follow you online as well for Flying Cat. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Appreciate the kind words. Awesome. Well, I think we should just dive in because there's so much that I really want your brain on. So, yeah, so I'll just start with the first thing that comes to my mind. So kind of a loaded question, but what I would want to start with is something that I think everyone in this sphere of domain of SEO and content are concerned about, which is AI these days. So, what is the value of SEO in the era of AI? Would be my question. You see it trending upwards, downwards. Do you see it changing in any way? And if yes, how so?
Yeah, I mean, my viewpoint about, pardon me, my viewpoint about AI in any field, SEO especially, is that it helps us to be better at what we do. It helps us to generate better results and generate more productivity and higher productivity. And I think that's the key for it. If I'm really honest with you, in terms of it's not necessarily about um, AI is going to take our jobs. You still need human in mind. You need human intuition. You need to know when AI is doing a good job. You need to know when AI is doing a not good job, and it's just going to help us to do things faster, easier, and better where potentially we couldn't do the things. I mean, a classic example is meta descriptions. I mean, many people don't even want to do meta descriptions. I know Google can ignore them anyway, but it's still an SEO task. It's still that agencies deliver meta descriptions every single day because it's a best practice task. And AI can speed that process up massively now, whereas before you'd have to manually do it yourself and get. I know there's ways around and tools that could have helped, but for most people it was always going to be a manual process, or even the writers had to do that. So I don't necessarily think that like AI is going to replace the industry or anything like that. I just going to think it's going to make us a lot better and able to do tasks which were, weren't as enjoyable, didn't allow you to focus on high leverage activities with your SEO. So I think AI will replace the mundane activities. Also, I think like with AI, it's going to help you to come up with ideas. I mean, I've been using AI recently, as last week, I'm coming up with some incredible ideas. Now, it's not to say that I couldn't come up with those ideas on my own, but one, I didn't, in terms of I was leaning on AI. I was having a chat with AI, almost like I was pushing it into going directions. It was giving me some ideas. My brain was working. So I think, in essence, AI is an assistant to us, and that's the way I would frame it to anybody. It's an assistant. It's like having your own marketing assistant, your own SEO assistant, who actually has got a lot of skills and knowledge, but ultimately can't do it for you. You still have to sign it off. And I think that's the key with it in any part of this, is that we're going to become AI operators. And it's going to help you, it's going to help me be better at my job, it's going to help me to be able to create things at scale that I wasn't able to do before. So I personally think we're in for a great time with AI. I know it's getting a bit of a bad rap in lots of ways, but it's very early days. But it will come thick and fast because machine learning does. It just outlearns. But I'm really excited, and I think every SEO can benefit from AI and leverage it. It's the ones that don't. It's the ones that say, no, I'm not going to do that, who will probably be left behind.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. I think for me personally, I work a lot with Google Sheets, for example, and I see the use case of ChatGPT, just creating Google Sheet scripts and for whatever use case that you wanted to create it for. And, you can play it with so much. And I'm not sure about content creation, to be honest, but the many examples that you gave there about meta description or generating ideas that might not be so obvious, that makes total sense. Yeah. Awesome. So in one of your LinkedIn posts, and I follow you, I've been following you for a long time now, and I think the way you talk about SEO as a growth channel is very unique. So in one of your posts, I remember you segmented search engine marketing into two categories, right? And you used this analogy of library and supermarket. I totally love that analogy. Could you explain and expand on it a little bit here?
Yeah. Okay. So this is this. I mean, I've seen. Obviously, I know other questions you got for me because I've seen the list, and you were very kind in giving me that, and thank goodness you did, because there's some deep questions in there. So, I think this is really a good place, a building block to start that will lean into the rest of the questions you've got. So, as marketers, there's marketing science out there now, and there's behavioral science, there's marketing science, and there's a lot of data and information about how brands grow. Now, SEO isn't just for brands, because SEO, we've got affiliate market, publishing market, there's loads of different models within SEO. But generally speaking, the big money where you want to go to is the brand side, because that's that's what customers and businesses want to grow, as they want to grow their businesses online. So the Ehrenberg Bass Institute of Marketing Science has done some fantastic research, and it's quite old, some of it is, in terms of it's been around for a bit, but it's constantly updated, and it's all about how brands grow. And if you haven't read the book How Brands Grow, I'd highly recommend it. And also How Brands Grow Too, the sequel for B2B work, is phenomenal. And that's generally where this all comes from. And this my sort of, if SEO can't align itself with scientifically proven marketing models, SEO doesn't work. And that's the reality of it. It's got to. It's almost like the theory of science and the universe and everything else. SEO has got to fit into what marketing's about and how brands can grow for it to even be able to access greater budgets. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to have conversations with the people who hold the purse strings to be able to say, hey, Luke, this is what SEO does. Now, because of the science of brand growth, we know that people come to the internet and people buy in biased states. There's the argument that someone stumbles upon a blog post and goes and buys something there and then is flawed, because I've certainly never just read one blog post and converted, and I'm sure that you probably haven't. It takes time, and we come back and forth on the internet. Google's done a huge studies around this, around the messy middle. It's out there. Purchase journeys are complex, and usually the higher risk the category, the more research we're going to do, because especially in the B2B marketplace, where we're risking our reputations, maybe even our jobs, we want to make sure we're making the right decision. So when we go to Google in two mindsets. One is the exploration mindset, where we're learning, and one's the purchase mindset, where we're ready to buy. So when you choose to buy something, you go in online to buy. Now, it sometimes takes a while for you to get there, and you go and you nudge and you go and have a look, and then you back off again because whatever reason, the time's not right. You need to question your partner or your business partner or your colleagues. There's so many reasons why we don't purchase there and then, but at some point we go to the internet in a purchase mindset, and we're going to make a purchase there and then. And depending on the I should say the which brand has stuck in our mind, which brand we think of when we go there, we're either going to choose a brand we want to do already, or we do a navigational search for that brand, or we do like a keyword search again, car insurance, and you scroll down and then you click, and maybe even you get quotes off different people, or maybe you buy there and then, depending on the circumstances. But we're in a buying mindset. So if we split that into search engine optimization, where does search fit into this? Well, you're in an exploration mode, or you're in what they call an evaluation mode, and that's what happens. But you've obviously got the buying mode, where you decide you're going to buy something. So evaluation and goes on in the mind largely. You can use this, the versus blog posts, and you can ask more long tail questions if you're trying to evaluate different options. But you mentally evaluate things. Some search is involved in that. And then the other side of things is your informational search, in terms of you going after just asking broad questions. Now, with the informational search, if we pretend the internet is like a town for a second, or a city, and inside that city there's a huge mega shop called Amazon, a bit like Walmart, you can buy anything you want from there. You've got Pinterest, you've got all these different digital places, but we're totally unaware the internet exists. You've got no access to the internet, it's just this digital city. And inside the digital city, there's a supermarket, and it's called Google. And there's a library, and that's also called Google. Now, inside the library, every book on the shelf is basically, well, every book in the library is got branding. It's got there's publisher's details on there. That's the business. That's the brand. And by picking it up and flicking through it and reading what you want to read, you see the brand logo, you see the brand identity, you get to hear what they're saying about it. That's a web article. That's an article online, a piece of content online. You as a business are the publisher. So people on their purchase journey will come in there and start looking at the books, and they'll see the books and they'll see the logos, the nice patterns, the red covers, the little publisher's logo, and it sticks in their brain. So what happens then is when we decide to purchase, we go to the supermarket. And we're going to look at the aisle space, because what we're doing there is we've decided to purchase, and there's all these products online. But we've walked into the supermarket, or we've walked into the search engine in that mental state of purchasing. Now, sometimes what we do is we pick up a product, we look at the ingredients, we look at what it's about, and look about it, and then decide now, we put it back, or we go and pick another one up and we consider it. And that can be at your evaluation stage too. But every one of those is a click. And if you're paying for PPC, every time someone picks up the product and puts it back, you're paying for a click. In reality, what happens is we put something in the basket and then we go and purchase it, or we go through the lead process for the business. And with the supermarket analogy, PPC is the supermarket putting your products on those shelves in a place which is easily visible in eyesight and line of sight. So it's there, right there on the shelf in front of us. You've paid for that. They've done it for you. SEO is us putting the products ourselves. It's the manufacturer going to the supermarket and putting the products on the shelves. Sometimes they can get a good place next to the aisle line side, like the PPC products. Sometimes it's a top shelf. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's lower down. And that's the analogy I'd give you in terms of how marketing works. And I know you've got some questions about physical and mental availability, but that's what it aligns in. The mental availability, we can build mental availability when people go to the library, because we can get to see the logos, and it's that same logo that's on the products. It's the same people. Now, sometimes, they'll know the brand of business and go direct to them, and that's ultimately your ideal goal of SEO. So they come to you directly. But with this analogy of the supermarket, the reality is that Google owns the supermarket. We want to be on the shelves, and SEO can put you there with work. You can put there, and you're not paying every time somebody picks up your product. The PPC, every time someone picks up the product and looks at it and reads it and put it back, then that's what you're paying for. Now, an actual fact is there's far more shelf space for the non-paid stuff, the SEO stuff. There's far more shelf space, and most people look all around as well and go and pick things up and drop things down. You're not paying for that. But with PPC, every time someone picks up your product and puts it back, you're paying for that, and eventually you'll win some. You'll win some of that sales volume. But and that's the analogy, if that makes sense, in terms of how I explain search. You want to be on the shelves in the supermarket, and you want to be. Sometimes it makes sense to pay. Sometimes it makes sense to pay and have a bit more shelf space, and sometimes it doesn't. But that's really what's going on. And we'll pick the brand. We'll convert. We'll pick the brand off the shelf that aligns with us for lots of different reasons. And all the marketing that you do, all the brand marketing, just helps you nudge you to pick that one, that pick your brand up, if that makes sense.
Right. That's amazing. I totally love that. And it's very interesting to see how much of human buying psychology is pretty much the same, whether you're on the internet versus, in a supermarket, or your buying decisions are getting influenced by a library, for example. At the foundation level, it looks like it's pretty much the same. We're human beings and we make the decisions, in the same way. So you mentioned about evaluation and exploration. So it looks like what you're saying is that you have to work on these availability, like for example, putting information in the library so that you can influence people and build a brand, etc. And on the other hand, you want to put the products, maybe in front of the customers that you want to target in the supermarket. But at the end of the day, it will still come on to the ingredients, the pricing, etc. So uh, you as an SEO can work on the availability, but the product team and the overall company needs to make sure that the ingredients and everything else that comes into play when the consumer is making a decision is in line with the interest of the consumer, right?
Yeah, that's entirely right. There's lots of ways to do marketing. We kind of get a little bit, I have to say, we do kind of get a little bit hepped up over digital marketing at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we're just putting information in front of a consumer, hoping they can find it, and hoping even if they land on our site in different ways from different channels, and that content connects with them in some way. Now, if you think about it, back in our digital little town, you could go TV. There could be a gigantic screen which is running ads constantly, which people are seeing and they can't absorb. That's an equivalent to having a huge cinema screen in your town, and that everyone can see, and it's always on. And you're reaching more and more people. That's like mass marketing and stuff like that. Everything affects behavior. Ultimately, the ingredients in your product, have to be good. Otherwise, people aren't going to come back. But to grow a brand, you need more sales. That's ultimately it. And you're going to have to leverage anything you can to get more sales. Now it's SEO isn't necessarily the be all and end all. We have to appropriately weight SEO, because for some categories, some business models were commoditized or whatever like that. SEO isn't the be all and end all. And for some, PPC is just a completely perfect model of business, and it works. If I'm needing an emergency locksmith, I'm going to click on the first one. But generally speaking, when it comes to how SEO works, it is no different than how anything else. We're just putting information in front of prospects and reaching them on their category, their research into the category, their buyer journey, with the hope that when they do decide to buy, they pick us because they remember us. And all it does
Right.
really is alter memory architecture in the brain. It's like a bit like advertising, in terms
Yeah.
of someone's landing on your webpage and you've got a fantastic article. Say, for example, you want to buy a caravan. Let's just say you want to buy a caravan, you want to go caravanning, you're thinking about having lower cost stuff for the kids and things. So what happens is you land on an ultimate guide to caravans by a caravan company, and who sell caravans. That's fantastic. You do all research, you're on that site and you're completely being seen their logo, you're getting all that information, and the law of reciprocity is that we're on that site for a long time, and as a result we might end up clicking on some of the adverts on that site for their own products and their own caravan. Check this, find out how much you could borrow for a caravan on our caravan on our caravan financing calculator. There's all kinds of ways. Or sign up here, get this downloaded into your inbox, and then we can communicate with you again via marketing, via email. There's loads of ways to market to businesses, and all we're doing with search really is trying to be rememberable. So all I think is SEO is about making a business easy to find and easy to mind when they come to buying, and that's it really. It's just like other marketing channels in a lot of ways. It's just that we have to appropriately weight it and obviously appropriately measure its performance as well.
Yeah, yeah. Totally makes sense. I think a lot of people confuses SEO as the last touch attribution model. People read a blog post, they convert into buying this enterprise level software, which of course doesn't make a lot of sense. So talking about the buyer journeys, there's a lot of chatter around the change in B2B buyer's journey in 2023. And talking of dark social, some folks think that SEO is losing its value in acquiring customers, right? And I know that you have a very solid kind of point of view on this. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I know. Listen, so I kind of think I know where this has come from in terms of entrepreneurs that are online and speaking about things. Entrepreneurs are great; they can break the system and break the mold, and they can be very successful doing a certain thing for certain people. But if you've launched 2 businesses and you've scaled them and you've got this massive, and you've bootstrapped them or whatever, it gives you a very powerful voice within the world, and that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly okay to have a viewpoint. But with any kind of business model, any kind of marketing, you've got to test in your own environment, because what works for one doesn't necessarily work for another. And there are perfectly massive businesses out there that have grown with SEO, that we know that. There's case studies out there, you can see them, how they've grown. And there's ones which struggle for lots of different reasons, investment and things like that. Do I think there are other ways to market? Yes, of course there are. Do I think that necessarily saying that SEO isn't one of those? It's the typical SEO. It depends. You can create a podcast and you can create a YouTube series. You can do networking events. That's just brand marketing. And I'd argue that if you're only reliant on SEO, you're not really activating other marketing channels, and that's the truth about it. It's okay to have other marketing channels. It doesn't have to be this way or that way. It's all about where you want to put your budget and your attention at the particular time. You can have a massive traffic website that doesn't generate any money. There's you can have a huge organic machine that doesn't generate any sales whatsoever, and you can have a different approach to marketing that gets people into your funnel, gets people exposed to the business, and through entirely different channels, through podcast sponsoring, things like that. That's all brand marketing, and that's perfectly cool. Does that mean SEO's done and dusted? No, never will. Dark social's been around for 10, 15 years. Dark social has existed probably as long as the internet. Do I think that as long as emails are, and email's an example of dark social, do I think there are lots of ways to market these days? Yes, of course, TikTok, things like that. They're just other channels as part of the brand marketing mix. And you have to, as a brand marketing manager or a marketing manager full stop, you have to really learn how to activate the best ones for you. It's not a case of SEO's rubbish anymore. It's not working. It does work perfectly well. There's lots of exciting other channels, and you have to test what works for your business. What works for one won't necessarily work for other. You have to test everything in your own environment.
That makes sense. Well, again, I think it's very subjective to some level. Of course, there might be businesses for which SEO is not the right channel to invest in, and maybe like maybe cold calling is still a thing. So maybe like it really just depends on where your consumers are hanging out to explore new products, get information, etc.
Of course,
Yeah,
as well. And there's still people. I get sales emails, cold emails, everything. Like
yeah,
everyone does. There's lots of different ways to do this, and to come to marketing, it's up for you as a marketing manager to investigate which works and which doesn't work, and to invest appropriately in the right channel for your growth.
yeah. So, talking about attribution, there's this idea of influenced revenue or assisted conversions, right? Which is the opposite of last touch conversions, kind of a lean attribution model. And the longer the sales cycle, the more those untracked touch points would be in a buyer's journey, right? And oftentimes the value of SEO gets hidden behind those hard to track touches. So, is there some advice you have, for someone to track and measure the true impact of SEO on customers and revenue?
Well, first of all, someone reached out to me the other day, asked me to go on a podcast, and said, "Oh, you need to show your SEO results, and we can discuss a case study and stuff." And I hate that, and not against the podcast or anything like that. SEO, PPC, all those ones, everyone's in a fight to try and bring attribution. Oh, we did this, we got the click, we won the click, and know the marketing one. If we understand how sales happen, you can have sales activation methods. An email, for example, could get sent out as a weekly email, and that generates XYZ sales. And who gets the credit? Did it come from organic originally? Was it the sales copy that got the credit? Somebody could run a Facebook ad campaign, and that gets the click, or and then the maybe they clicked an ad later on in the search. There's so many different facets and routes. This attribution model about what did the heavy lifting, what did the final thing, is really, really, I think it's narrow focused. I think it doesn't align with marketing itself. I think it's pretty much weighted in favor of certain channels as well. And it's poor because, the PPC could be the channel that got the first click and the organic get the last click, and use lots of different attribution models. But I think we're reporting on flawed data anyway. There's a lot of ad click fraud. We know that. There's a lot of bot traffic into websites. We know that as well. And we're probably trying to put our hands up to claim things. And even if we do it as SEO, we're claiming things that aren't right. I'm a big fan of, rather than trying to claim attribution metrics, to actually look at the key performance indicators for a brand. So, we've got, the share of search volume, that's an interesting one. You compare yourself against the competition in your niche. Hrefs and SEMrush, they all do great charts you can look at now, where you can compare yourself against how many competitors. You can see where you are, you can see their growth. That's a good metric. That's a real metric. Where are we in relation to the competitions in this channel that's in search? What about branded queries? What about non-branded queries? Where are we ranking? What's happening? Where are our high traffic pages and in the what's called returning visitor. So they're interesting. When people type, the things that you would pay the cost per clicks for on Google, where do we rank in there now? We want to aim to go after these 15, 20 keywords. Where are our rankings now compared to where 6 months? That's actually a trackable metric. Well, we aren't ranked. We're still ranked on page 2 for all our buyer terms. Why is this? Those are metrics that matter. Informational search, have we mapped out the customer journey? There's so much to do it, but what we try and do is focus on how many sales we brought in, and they aren't meaningful metrics for a business are going to help them to win more sales over time. And we can pretend this thing as long as we want, but we've got to become more tactical. The thing is, it's really easy to show on a spreadsheet that how many people checked out in the last 3 months with organic, and you can show that data. It's probably flawed anyway, but I think we can do a better job of giving meaningful metrics regarding an SEO campaign's performance than revenue, because within any SEO campaign, whenever you just look at it on that month, in that month, you don't see the future buyers. You only see the people that clicked in the last 3 months and were attributable, or the month, or depending what reporting schedule you're using. You don't see the future value you're going to get and the future brand value. And also, we don't even talk about what's, the cost of your brand being discovered by a relevant, person. You're paying clicks. We don't compare cost per click, do we, with things? And tools like Hrefs, the traffic value is a big metric in there. What it would cost to gain this traffic with equivalent PPC, and that's a value, even though it's debatable as the accuracy of the metric. It's still got a value to it. So I think we've got to change our mindset, not just certainly us, because we are the worst reporters on it, because we're in this weird battle against PPC all the time, when it's not even a battle. We're not even on the same pitch mostly. We've got to really report and challenge businesses to look at SEO in a different way, because when you look at it in a different way, measure it differently, the performance changes, and we perform better, and we can unlock more budget, because we're not being judged against the sales data, which is largely incorrect anyway, and attributable to other things.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think what you mentioned about the time lag, especially in the conversion journey, is really interesting, because sometimes with SEO, for example, an SEO or the content team, for example, could have been growing the brand affinity and the brand resonance in the mind of the consumer incrementally month over month, but it's hard to track because those people are not ready to buy yet, and maybe they convert in the next month through PPC, and all of the credit goes to PPC now, right?
Maybe 12 months.
Yeah.
Most business journeys in the B2B sector are arguably over 12 months or longer. SEO in itself has got a huge buyer cycle. Choosing the agency, deciding on SEO, deciding your investment, and not just for SEO. You just think of all the other things that goes on in a business. You want to buy a new lift, for example, for your business premises. You've got a lot of hoops to go through to purchase orders, budgeting, everything else like that. And a lot of people are doing research early on in the journey, especially in the B2B marketplaces. I love the idea that you can convert to somebody to have a free trial from a blog post. And it does happen. We know it happens, but it also doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen for loads of businesses. And sometimes what happens is a conversion is someone downloading a form or filling in a request, and then the sale doesn't happen for a long time. And the sale might come through a salesperson in the business. And SEO maybe doesn't get that. Generally speaking, the companies that invest enough in SEO with the right agency are always going to be happy, because they'll see their business is growing. And that's the truth about it. In my experience, the companies that don't invest a good enough budget, or companies that don't invest with the right agency for various reasons, tend not to be happy with SEO, because it doesn't perform in any way for their business. No one's really miserable when the business is growing and sales are up. Everyone's happy with things. It's when sales are down, people start looking to blame, or performance isn't as good. And there's a lot of mediocre SEO performance out there, but that's often down to the wrong strategy, the wrong activity. but also down to incorrect budget, and people expect it to work wonders, and very often, I have a conversation with people and I've asked them what they're spending on PPC, and it's like, oh, let's just say, for example, £30,000 a month, and what do you want to spend on SEO? £1,000, and those kind of conversations don't make sense to me, because I can't understand how you get into that figure, why you need 30,000 and 1,000 for one and 30,000 for the other channel. And but it goes on daily. Those conversations do happen all the time, and we've got to try and change that model, because it doesn't help us. And the attribution model is vastly flawed. We know it is.
Yeah. I also think at the same time, for example, branded search volume can also be an indicator of success, right? So depending on what programs and channels you're heavily investing in, you can see that if, for example, one company is big on SEO and they're not, super active with their email marketing or social media, and their branded search volume is still growing, then most probably SEO is doing something right, right?
Pardon me. Yeah, of course. I mean, share of search interest is a really interesting metric that Lesbinet from the IPA in Britain has put together. And basically you Google Trends volume against your competitors, a bit like share of search volume. I really like share of search volume from an SEO perspective, and the measurement tool about how you compare against your competitors for all the above. But share of search interest is a really good one, because that covers all of your brand marketing. I'm not saying that it's precise or exact or anything like that, but if you're noticing your brand going up, there's obviously something that's working out there for your brand. TV advertising is probably the best SEO technique in the world. There's no doubt about that. Over a long enough period of time, nothing works over a short period of time. Things work over a longer period of time, and the big brands know that. And for example, I've just been on a website for Tesco's. It's a supermarket in the UK. I don't know where you're based at the moment, but they've got a huge recipe website that I didn't even know existed, that generates 2 million visitors a month. And how clever it's got one-click order, and you can add all the ingredients for a single recipe into your shopping cart. It's not linked on the Tesco site. It's a completely different domain, and but it's branded. And that, for example, is a great search product and stuff. But how many sales do Tesco attribute through that? Sometimes, do they even care? Is it just going to be a report that gets on a desk in a quarter? The marketing manager is probably dead happy. But when you've got TV advertisements and everything else like that going on, it's probably people don't, in the bigger businesses, don't like break it down as we do. But when you're going working with a business whose only channels are PPC and digital and SEO, we look at things on a very granular basis. What's the SEO doing? What isn't the other one doing? So yeah, I think that's where the problem lies in terms of expectation is a big issue. What the SEO is going to do for you as well, and so attribution. You could talk about attribution all day, but definitely share of search interest is interesting. Share of search volume is interesting. Branded performance, branded keywords, that's interesting. Returning visitors, informational search. Are these the cost? You could even do research in terms of what your customers actually ask. Before starting your SEO campaign, and we want to rank for these questions, and what's the performance like of the campaign going after these selected keywords, because we know they're on the customer journey. We know that because people have done research and things. So there's lots of metrics, but the current industry standard is basically pulling off a spreadsheet or from a rank tracking tool and Google Analytics, and giving people a dashboard, and we wonder why SEO doesn't get a better share of the money. Well, it's because we're not talking about the value of SEO in the reporting that we do.
Yeah, exactly. I also love, this first party data of, directly getting customer insights by customer interviews, or any other way that you can compile these insights from the customers and then create content against them. So totally agreed there. So yeah, so a classic SEO opinion is that you cannot generate new demand with SEO. And if you want to invest in SEO as a growth channel, you have to have existing demand for your product or service or whatever you're offering, right? So you've talked about this idea of expanding search volume with other tactics, very creative techniques, for example. And I was wondering, what do you think about this whole idea of generating demand with SEO? Do you think SEO can be used as a demand generation channel, or is it more of a demand capturing channel all the time?
Well, it can be both. I mean, generally speaking, SEO doesn't generate demand. I mean, that's the truth of it. But mental states generate search demand. So, for example, let's just say um, you've just watched a TV show based in Jamaica, and you're thinking about the beach and you want to go on holiday. So you go to search looking for cheap holiday ideas. That demand has been generated by a TV show, and you go on there, and the search captures that demand, and but also it might be best holidays, best hotels in Jamaica, best beaches in Jamaica, and things like that. And you're not really, the demand is sort of created, but it's nurtured by search. So it's created by other things, but then search can nurture it. What I mean in terms of the Tesco idea is the Tesco recipe is a great example. Is that the demand for buying takeaways or the demand for buying Tesco shopping. I might never shop at Tesco, but the very fact that they've made a website with tons of recipes. If I'm Googling to make something, then what they've done is, they haven't captured demand as such, because what they've done is they're telling me how to make the recipe and making it super easy for me to click on, get the ingredients. Now, I might not want to do that there. I might want to go to the other supermarket and buy it and just carry it on my phone and shop around using these ingredients, so I think there's creative options to nurture demand in search, but demand is created in loads and loads of different ways. But again, it's all about that mental availability. You can actually latch on to that demand created by other channels and other situations and what they call category entry points and things like that. And you can do that with search in creative ways. But I don't think search is necessarily that good for demand creation, but because there's always something that comes beyond that. But for example, though, if someone lands on your website for a demand, you might be able to nurture another demand because they see something else. Hey, have you seen this? Well, you also might like this and that, So there's ways to direct people, but as a demand generation, I don't think it's a particularly great. It has to foster and nurture. But we go on search journeys, don't we? So you go online to go in something, to do something, and you end up 50 searches deep into something else, and you just end up on this weird journey. So yeah, I think probably it's not a great demand channel, but I think for nurturing it's very good.
Yeah. So if I throw a scenario towards you,
Mhm.
so imagine, that I have a social media content creation SaaS tool, right? And our narrative is, let's say, that you don't need social media agencies and this SaaS tool can do everything for you, right? So in that case, would you say that if I target a piece of content that talks about social media marketing, and within the content I, put together and present my narrative that social media agencies do not make sense in 2023, and here's a tool that you should use and something like that, would you consider a demand generation activity using search, or would that be something else?
That's a tough one. I mean, you'd have to break it down and things. So, I mean, if you've got a client, so let's say the hypothesis is you've got a client that's a SaaS tool that goes against a do-it-yourself social media agency that you don't pay an agency. This tool takes care of ads, takes care of everything else yourself. You know, realistically, the only people searching or needing that would necessarily be small businesses or even maybe big businesses, but you're going after as many people as possible. So with that, you could create content that targets people who are trying to master social media. How to get more customers on using Facebook, how to write great Facebook posts, how to do hashtags, and you go after all that kind of content out there. In actual fact, their demand for the product isn't there. They don't even know it exists. So by capturing that, the demand you're capturing is the demand to learn, the education. You're back in the library. You're helping people to achieve one goal, but whilst they're there, you are telling them about this other solution. Would say, hey, this is how you do this, but did you know we can do that in 2 clicks for you using our tool? And you get into almost the self-advertising model. So if you think about what affiliates do and publishers do, they rent space out for display ads. For people, that's how it is, or they have clicks to go in and they make money that way. You can be your own affiliate site and you can be your own display ads because you're a publisher. You're presenting relevant content in the library, you're back in the library, you're presenting relevant content and saying, hey, Luke, did you know our tool did that? And it might be this, oh, I didn't know that. I would love free trial, free, and sign up now, and it takes 2 seconds. I just signed up a couple of an hour ago for an UI tool, an AI tool, design tool. I forget its name now, but it's because somebody put a video on LinkedIn and said, look how cool this is. And I thought, oh, well, I'm interested. I'll probably never become a paying customer. In fact, it's highly likely I won't be a paying customer. But I went on and I had a look at it. Now I'm a conversion. In actual fact, that conversion will have been attributed to LinkedIn because I went through the link from their page and things like that. But the actual content was somebody else putting a video on and saying, look how cool this is. So, but the problem with the attribution model again is that makes out that like the dark social or B2B and customers has got the conversion when I haven't converted yet. I've just literally signed up for free trial and free account and stuff. So. And I'm trying to look for loads of AI tools. I would imagine there's tons of AI tools out there that are being, attributed success or metrics to Twitter and things like that. But so, you can jump on that information and say, hey, look, we're an affiliate. This is what we're doing. Whilst you're here reading about this, did you know about this? And that's for me, that's just marketing anyway. And it's part of the publishing model that you can use for your content, and that's almost like legitimizing and saying, hey, look, what we can do is we're going to go and reach out to all these people who are googling this because they are our audience. They're not in the market right now to buy a tool because they're not thinking about having an agency. They're looking for doing it themselves, but we can tell them how they can do it for themselves. But whilst they're there, we can say, hey, listen, this is another way. It's a different way. Have you think about this? So almost like you're educating the prospect on the journey. Is that demand generation? I'm not sure, but it's what you're doing is you're advertising. You're advertising your business in front of people who are looking for something else, just like affiliates do, just like display marketing works for other businesses as well.
Fair enough. So imagine if there's a company that has been investing in SEO for, a long period of time actively as their main channel, and they've succeeded, in that channel really, really well. So what do you think their end goal would be if we try to extrapolate the impact of SEO for them, right? So typically, I think the ultimate goal, as imagined by most SEOs and SEO companies, is to build so much of topical or domain authority that they hit the publish button and their content gets to the first page instantly, right? Like that's what they're trying to aim for ultimately. But you've mentioned the concept of a website becoming its own search engine one day, and I found that really, really interesting. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. Okay. So you've got what's called the available. This is how I see it, by the way. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. This is my worldview. And so you have what's the available search. So we just talked about you have your service or product pages, whatever you're doing, and I'm going to talk about this like it's a business or brand, direct to consumer. You've got your service and product pages. You want to rank for those things. Then you've got the available search on the customer journey, having the things that your customers are likely to, social media software and things like that. I mean, it's linked to the buyer stuff, and it could be the best social media software, whatever like that. There's lots of stuff out there that makes sense from a keyword research perspective to go and create content for. And yes, if you've got higher authority, you do enjoy the ability to be able to rank content quicker. We know that, and that is a great goal. But sooner or later, that market saturates. So, and you're going to have to look at that by looking at, say, well, if we take SEO tools, because we take Ahrefs and SEMrush, the two obvious ones. So the two biggest tools, and Neil Patel, look at his website as well, add him into the mix. And what you've got is they've taken up all the available search. They've taken up the available search. If you Google anything to do with SEO, 99.9% of the time, you're going to find them ranking with some kind of content because they've got the money to be able to pay the writers. People do it for free anyway and write them for free, and they've occupied this. Same with the other publishers, Search Engine Land Journal and those kind of things. They've occupied the available search. So at that point, it's an authority score, but eventually everyone's going to have highest authority possible, and then it's going to come down to different kind of really refined. Google's got to put someone else there. That's great. You've taken up the available search, you spend all that money. What next? So the next thing is, you look at expanded search in terms of what can you go after that's your audience is searching for that they didn't know, that they could be your customers, but it's even further at the top of the funnel. It's related sort of shoulder content, you might want to call it that. So you go out as wide as possible till it doesn't make sense anymore, because it just becomes, you're just writing stuff that's not relevant in any way, shape, or form. But you can fill that up to a degree, but then because the further you go off topic, the less chance you've got a ranking regardless of your website. There's a fall off on that. So the idea that of this being your own search engine is the idea that you're searched for, that you become the authority in your niche, whatever that is, and you have what described as a high degree of information fitness. So we're information carnivores. We tend to, the information fitness side of things comes from the information foraging theory, the idea that it's a scientific theory, that the idea that we've grown and evolved as a species because we can consume information. And if you think, it kind of makes sense as well logically. So, but what we do is we consume information in one place and before going to another one. And when we land on a web page, we judge that web page and website based on its information fitness. And if it doesn't look very good, we click the back button. So this is the argument about thin content versus, good content versus bad content or AI content. If the content is thin, doesn't further me, and doesn't look of value for me, I click the back button, and we know that affects rankings and things. So the idea is you become the best source of information in your sector, and you spread out as much as you can. Yes, sometimes that will involve high volume keywords, and that's inevitable, but that's not the objective. The objective is to be the best source of information in your niche for your clients. And then what happens is you want to try and, it's all about that memory thing again, by the way. So you're trying to be this resource that they come back to. So give a good analogy, backlinko. Brian Dean is the original guy of SEO who created an incredible website that's been sold to SEMrush, and it's an amazing website. By anyone's standard, that website is a school of SEO, high level design, high level UX, great pages, very information rich. It's hard to imagine people in the SEO world who haven't been on that website. And
for sure.
yeah, it's and he's made quite a lot of money out of it, I'm sure, and the sale of SEMrush as well has furthered that. So that's an information rich site. So, and originally it didn't only have like 12 articles, and it generates tons of traffic off 12 articles. But over time, that site now virtually covers every aspect of SEO. It does. It's just evolved as and you can spend ages in there. As a result, everyone knows backlinko. Backlinko. I know backlinko. It's got a high degree of information fitness, and as a result, the brand is very strong, even though realistically it's a tiny team. So you can have that kind of effect with somebody because of the quality, and that comes down to who you're going to pay. So when people chose who they were going to have SEO training off, they chose backlinko, and I did, because of the quality of the information, the fact that they'd stuck in me so much because of that quality. We had that brand. So whenever I want to find out anything about search, backlinko is actually usually the first place I would head. It's the first place I tell beginners to go. It's the place where I tell business owners to go, because there's so much on there and it's such a quality resource. So in essence, backlinko is its own search engine in itself. And if you can be that for a customer, you're going to have that high degree of mental availability. So when someone does choose to buy, they're thinking of you. Does that make sense? Have I got that in the right way?
Yeah, for sure. I think that makes total sense. And now that you've mentioned this, I think if we apply this same model to other industries, then we think of WebMD for healthcare, or any other company that comes into your mind when you think of any industry, any use case, anything at all, and then your own searches become very brand centric, right? For example, if I want to know about something related to SEO, I don't just want some SEO tips. I want the SEO tips from Ahrefs, right? So I'll type the brand name along with it. So that makes total sense.
You
So
go evolved after that, by the way. Sorry to cut in.
yeah,
So if you think you've got the available search market, that's one attitude. So let's go down the keyword research, and it makes sense to do it that way. To go out after target. There's loads of reasons, because you've got budget to use, and you have to use budget in the appropriate way. But at a certain point in time, the objective is, okay, well, we've got traffic coming in, we're doing really well. They've just approved the SEO budget for the next 12 months. We can spend £10,000 a month for the next 12 months. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, let's make this the best website in our sector. That's a goal. And then once you've done that and you've ticked that list off, you've really gone after everything that's relevant. It's the best quality content. You're the best in your niche, or certainly you're the same as the best in quality. Then you can start looking at branded content products, and creating something that's going to meet your customers' needs. Even though they're not necessarily in the place to buy there and then, and you can have sub brands. So arguably, SEMrush has done that. So SEMrush have got their whole thing going on with their website, their academies, and brilliant, fantastic stuff. And then what they did is buy Backlinko. So however they do that, they might say Backlinko by SEMrush, or Backlinko from SEMrush, or just have Backlinko sitting on its own. They've no doubt got rid of Ahrefs, most mentions of Ahrefs in their website by now, I dare say, or certainly very many of them. So straight away, if you're coming to Backlinko, you've got all that brand mental availability, and you're seeing SEMrush. Well, who are you likely to decide to have when you eventually choose to have your SEO tool? When you actually go in an SEO tool, then you'll choose SEMrush because you found Backlinko, you built up that trust from the website, and there's really interesting stuff around trust and studies around how trust is developed online by people relying on information in websites. So then you go and choose SEMrush. And this is the clever thing about SEMrush's tactics, to be perfectly honest with you. Because there is a period of time it takes, you have to invest into a tool to learn it, and you've got all the academy and everything else like that. Well, after you've spent 3-4 months learning SEMrush, realistically, you're not going to switch. There's a cost of switching. You have to be happy, really unhappy to cost, and the tools know that. So once they've got you as a customer, you're going to be there for quite some time until you say no. Now, the other thing is, because they're expanding routes into their business, which is really clever with this occupying different real estate on the search engine, they can have multiple listings now. So SEMrush has probably got double the search volume in the same SERP. So they own the real estate in the web property. Because they're doing that, and they're constantly showing up, and SEMrush is being constantly mentioned. It's a really clever strategy because they're occupying the real estate in the search engines. And Glenn Allsop has done some fantastic blog posts. I don't know if you've seen it, about the 16 companies that dominate Google, and you can see the publishing houses. They own the search engine results for so many phrases. And that's what they've done. These 16 companies have all on the websites, so they dominate all the search results. And Ahrefs is I know they did their search engine thing, and they might be trying something else, but so far SEMrush now has got, it's starting to spread its wings, and it's a really clever method of growing a business and expanded. It's creating a content product, for an informational product for your brand. And there's ways to do that. You can buy a website that's like Backlinko, or you can build one, and you've got the resources to go after something else. And you could even come up with a concept that isn't done before. And you could create a concept that you could create, which you could leverage a little PR, and it sits in its own little thing where people go searching for it because it's of use to people. Wordle was an example for the New York Times. New York Times created Wordle, and I don't buy the New York Times or anything like that, but all of a sudden the Wordle was the biggest thing going, wasn't it? And I'm sure if you lived in New York, everyone knew about Wordle, and the New York Times came to mind. And there's quite a few examples of that knocking around, where people expand for branded content products. So there's always an expansion. We can always expand search, and that's the cool thing about it. As long as people search, and we can create new search. So we can create new searches and demand using other marketing channels to go to search as well. There's loads of clever ways, and we can use digital PR to create even greater demand for the current search that's there. So there's loads of ways to use SEO that we're only scratching the surface, and that's why it's such an exciting industry.
For sure. Well, now that you've mentioned it, I think of Ahrefs, for example, and I think the other day I saw a blog post on their blog, and that was about the 4 P's of marketing, and I was like, that's definitely not directly related to SEO, but still it makes sense for them to go into that sphere because they've captured everything that exists maybe related to SEO directly. So it makes sense for companies to broaden their horizons and expand a broader theme now. Same goes for Canva. I was putting together something related to Canva and the way they capture demand. It looks like they've captured so much of it around almost everything that we can possibly imagine. And now they have this whole gigantic content segment around colors, right? So if you search for any color, and then Canva shows up on, somewhere around the first page, and they just explain what that color means, what its code is, etc. And that definitely doesn't get them signups, but still it makes sense for them to cover that information since they've already hit the ceiling with most of the demand capturing content, right?
Yeah, well, that's like TV advertising. So, I mean,
Yeah.
arguably, Canva should be, if they aren't, they should be advertising on TV. That's the big one for them, because, but you just, for the sake of what is not, let's just say a couple $100 internal time to create an article, and you've obviously got maybe resources and things like that. There's a cost, but when you compare that to TV advertising, the cost of it's so tiny, and you might be capturing somebody who's very top of funnel, but bear in mind they have a really clever remarketing models and things like that can go on, and somebody looking for a color, information about a color, might actually be a florist who's totally unaware that Canva exists, and all of a sudden, ooh, what's this Canva thing? Oh, I could use that in my business. That's interesting. And then they go away and not think about it. But in the time they think, oh, there's these design apps I could use. Let me Google, best design apps. And then somebody's wrote an article and Canva shows up on that list. And then you've got that mental availability, and then you're connecting the dots that way.
Yeah.
And the thing
Right.
is, it's a really is a marketing model to try and measure the attribution of it. This is a nightmare to do. You just can't measure what, that conversion might take 3 years for them to become a Canva. I'm a Canva Pro person, by the way. So I'm a Canva Pro subscriber, and I've known about Canva for 8 years at least. And I only became a Canva Pro subscriber in the last, I think, 2 at most, maybe 3. So it took 4 or 5 years or something before I even became. But I've known about them. I don't go to the website. I actually, I had a go years ago, a free account, and I don't really need that, and didn't use it very much. And I've known about Canva for a long time. Who's going to get the attribution for my conversion? The PPC ad that I clicked because I'm so lazy that I couldn't be able to scroll down to actual Canva's organic bit. If they did bid on brand, I'm just saying that. But that's the reality. And then somebody's going to be clapping their hands and saying, "Oh, we got that new customer from PPC today." No, you didn't. No, it was an article you wrote 10 years ago, whatever, or 8 years ago that I read, and then that led to me having a free go of your tool. I didn't really like it, so I left, and then I didn't really need it. And then now you've had me for 2 years, and it's, and also during that time I've been exposed to other marketing where you've been out there in terms of that's just fed in my feed, or I Googled something and you showed up and I landed and read the article, and eventually I chose Canva rather than Figma. So
Yeah.
it's that simple, and we try and probably attribute things too granularly and say, oh no, does it make sense writing that piece of content on colors and scale it so we piece of content on every single color there is? Yeah, probably, because that person might one day become our customer, and the cost of doing it's really small. So let's just get away and do it.
Right.
So but Canva's growing. I'm sure you'd have to speak to Canva and see how their SEO has been doing for them, but I'm pretty sure they'd be very happy with their performance. But yeah, so it's a challenging world out there, but we're hopefully SEO can do a lot better.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Andrew. I really appreciate you taking out the time for this. You have amazing and very unique kind of a perspective when it comes to the value of SEO. And I'm pretty sure that everyone following you, let it be in my connections or in yours, totally enjoy your content every day.
Yeah, thank you very much for asking such detailed and in-depth questions. I mean, I think we've gone off on several tangents, but I think ultimately we're only scratching the surface with SEO, but we're probably beating ourselves with an attribution stick to try and make SEO gain access to the budgets that it needs, when there are very big examples of SEO working perfectly well. And also, I think businesses need to have a look at their attribution models, because it's not just because it says it on a sheet doesn't make it so, and attribution over a long period of time is very different, and profit on ad spend is very different than return on ad spend. So ROAS and POAS, there's lots of metrics out there. SEO needs a better budget to work probably SEOs are generally working miracles with very little, which is a shame because it's a perfectly good channel to use to grow your marketing. But like I said at the beginning, it's about appropriately weighting SEO, not overweighting, and certainly not underweighting its ability as a demand, the ability to capture some demand that's out there.
Yeah. Well, let's hope for the best in the future, and fingers crossed.
No
So
worries.
yeah, thank you so much, Andrew, and
Yeah,
yeah, that's a wrap.
thank you.